So I'm going to look for a couple of small splits. And the reason I'm doing this is because while this system works pretty good, it works a little bit better with some smaller splits. So I'm going to go to my wood stack, which is kind of depleted right now. I'm going to find a couple of, here's a good one. Okay, got a couple good little splits. I'm going to grab my kindling. So I'm running a little low on kindling, but I'm just going to grab a little stack of that. And I'll grab a newspaper. Good morning. On today's episode of Up North Knowledge, we're going to be talking about how to start a fire in a wood stove. A lot of people struggle with this. A lot of people get these fire starter cubes. My wife likes these. She doesn't necessarily like my method of starting a fire on the wood stove. So what we have is two nosy dogs and a little Intrepid 2 wood stove. So this is, a lot of people are going to say, you know, well, it's really not meant to heat a house. I'm going to show you how we use it to actually heat our whole house, basically. So stay tuned. What I do is take two splits that you saw me gathering up earlier. Okay, those are pretty big, right? They're not kindling by any means. And I put one towards the front and one towards the back. And what that does, you can see in the bottom, is that allows me to have air coming up through where I'm going to put the newspaper and the kindling. The way I like to do my newspaper is just take a full page, okay? Hard to do with one hand. Just going to ball it up. Doesn't have to be super tight. I'm going to stick it down right there, okay? So two splits, a couple pieces of paper. I think I'll put one more in there just for good measure. Excuse me there, Henry dog. Yeah, it's my boxer dog. Okay. Yeah, we'll put that in there about like that. All right, kind of stuff it down in there. Grab some of this kindling, and it's not super small kindling. I don't like them to just burn up and basically disintegrate. So I'll put one in there about like that. That looks like a good one. I'll put that across it, right? And it kind of dips down in there. And then let's just throw one more in there for good measure. All right, yeah, this one looks pretty good. I don't know what that red thing is, but all right. I like to top load my stove just because it's such a small little stove. See, loading it from the front be kind of a pain in the butt. I'm gonna get my lighter down here, and of course I always burn my fingers. And maybe I should get a longer one. Whoop. And I'm just gonna light the middle of that paper. Okay? And it went out on me. What are you doing? Trying not to burn my fingers here. Okay, just light the middle. Make sure that kind of catches some more paper as it's going. Okay, there we go. It's catching some more paper. There we go. Okay. Now at this point, I like to make sure my air is open all the way on the back. Oh, gonna open up my catalyst. Okay. I'll talk more about that catalyst or these catalyst stoves in another video, but you know, I kind of like them. All right, and if you have a damper on your pipe, make sure you open your damper up. So what this does right here, it kind of heats up that pipe a little bit. And everybody's heard that heating up the flue, or whatever you want to call it, that pipe right in there, what that does is allows for a better draft. Okay, notice front door's open, top's open, but I'm standing right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the top. My air on the back is all the way open. Okay, got a good little fire going in there. I'm going to close the doors. So I've got just a little bit like that. Nothing's going to come flying out. I'm going to let that heat up a little bit. All right, get a good fire going. We'll come back and check on it in a minute. So let's talk about why this method works, or why your method doesn't work. Okay, some people are under the misconception that the best way to start a fire is, some newspaper or something, flammable. They use fire starters or whatever, and then they put a little kindling on top, and they get that going in a cold stove. Then they have to find little tiny splits, okay, basically the size of my kindling, and they add a little bit, here and there. But sometimes that'll cause your fire to go out. All right, you've got cold air coming down. Oh, just one of my puppy dogs. You got cold air coming down your chimney that's basically snuffing out your fire. Okay, if you can't move the smoke out, it will not draw in the fresh air from the bottom. So my method, I put 2 bigger splits on either side. I got air coming up through the middle. I start the fire in the middle of that. What that does is that first initial little bit of fire actually warms up my flue, warms up my pipe, gets my draft working the way it's supposed to. It starts drawing fresh air in from the bottom, and that invigorates the fire a little bit. Once that begins to really burn pretty good, it starts burning those bigger splits that I put on the outside, and I don't have to open up the stove and put little bigger splits and stuff on the top. And I've already got my main fuel source going. I could actually leave this right to the point where my flue is warmed up, my pipe is up to temperature, and I can close my or activate my catalyst, close the catalyst lever, and I'm going to get a good efficient burn out of that. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I've still got the front open a little bit. I'm going to close that. Okay, I got a pretty good fire going in there right now. It's not a rager, but she's going pretty good. If I open the top, see my kindling is going good, and now the 2 bigger splits that I put on the outside, those are actually going pretty good. I don't need to put anything else in here for quite a while. Okay, I'm gonna keep an eye on my little gauge here. I know that right there is about where she runs all the time. I like to get it a little hotter when I first start the fire up. Make sure that flue and the pipe are good and hot. Okay, a good hot fire once a day is not a bad thing. Just got to keep an eye on it. Okay, so I don't need to add anything to that. So my fire is not going to get snuffed out by adding more wood. My pipe and my flue are all warm. My draft is working good. So, all right, that's it. I'll come back to it in a few minutes. Now, as you can see, my temperature has come up in my pipe a little bit. Okay, I know she's going good. And I know from personal experience that is about where my catalyst activates. Okay, I'm gonna open this up one more time. Okay, I've got a good fire going in there. My little fan's moving. We don't use that to really move heat or air. We actually use that so that I can glance in here and see that thing is still moving, and know that I still have a heat coming out of my wood stove. So now what I'm going to do on my type of stove, I'm going to flip that handle, which bypasses through the catalyst. Okay, and that's what makes these stoves pretty efficient. For a very small stove, this heats a lot of area. Okay. Now I am going to keep my air open a little bit. That's right back here. Okay. If I were to move it all the way over here, it kind of closes off the air. The same as a damper would. But moving that handle right here keeps my pipe from basically losing all the heat, right? It's like a damper, and keeps me from having a chimney fire. Now, one of the main things that you want to look for when you're starting a fire is good dry firewood, okay? Good hardwood. Don't fall into the trap of, well, I can use softwood for, just getting it going or whatever. I prefer anything that I'm going to burn in that stove is good to burn anytime, okay? And I don't burn softwood up here in Maine. We only burn hardwood, and it's got to be dry. Now, when I'm first starting a fire, I really don't care what the species of tree is, okay? I can get anything to burn just like that, whether it's oak, whether it's maple, ash, pretty much all of it, but it has to be dry. If you're a little concerned about your wood being dry enough, you can always stack it beside your wood stove, okay? It's very dry in here, and probably the best way to dry out that firewood right there is have it in the same room as the wood stove. Now, I would not suggest, putting a cord of wood in your stove room, okay? Even though we have a pretty good sized room here that our wood stove is in. Okay, I'm not going to put a lot in there. Most of it is stored in the garage. About a half a cord in the garage. And then we fill that up from our wood shed as we need it throughout the winter with my tractor. So that's pretty much it. Let me show you how we move the heat around and how we monitor that. As you can see, here's my little wood stove. And that goes out into a main part of the house. Okay, this used to be a sliding glass door. Somebody had built this 3-season room, and I opened it up. I really liked it and wanted to use the wood stove to heat the house a little better. Okay, so up here on the right-hand side, we have the temperature of this room. Once that fire's going good, it's going to get up to about 70 to 74. A lot of people would put a fan and blow the heat out of that room. What we find works better is if you use a fan, okay? This tower fan, it's pretty quiet, right? It's running right now, you can barely hear it. It's pushing the cold air, which is denser, into or towards that room. And what that does is takes all of this cold air that's over here, moves it that way, and allows the warm air to come in and fill the room. So we have a thermometer there, as well as one in our room. Because that is not a very big stove, but it heats the whole upstairs of this house. Okay? Now once my temperature drops back just a little bit in my stovepipe, I'm gonna go back here, open up my bypass. Okay, there's the bed of coals I have. Now is a good time to just throw in a couple of splits. Okay, I'm gonna burn up some of these little pieces. I've got two. Okay, just throw them in there. Put my bypass on. I'm gonna snuff that down just a little bit. I want you to be able to see that air intake. Okay, just about like that. Okay. Now from here, I'm gonna leave the stove alone. I'm gonna pay attention to that right number right there. It says 65. Okay. Now I'm going to start basing my adjustments off of that temperature. Okay, I don't want it 80 degrees in here. Good 70, 72. we'll be fine. So that's how I get my wood stove going. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Anybody can do it.